did that speech at Expo. Everybody was psyched about Pinball 2000. They wanted to see all about the development. You know, when I made my speech, I had a lot of friends in high places that had pretty much told me, I think the writing's on the wall for you guys. I think that Neil has reached the conclusion that he's going to shut down pinball. And so I thought, okay, how do I play this? I gotta, you know, I have to make a presentation on this thing, which was, I think, an engineering feat. But I had this nagging feeling that the baby was going to be stillborn.
I think for a lot of us that was a shock. You know, everybody always knew, you know, pinball could go away at any moment. Sure, you know, it was not in its heyday anymore, but he gave the speech that sounded like, you know, it was imminent. And a lot of us were going, how can that be? I mean, Revenge from Mars is hugely successful. Star Wars is just getting going and looks like it's going to be hugely successful.
It was clear to me after the fact that George knew something was up. Just the feeling, I mean, I think that's been recorded, that speech that George gave. I think that's probably pretty indicative of what everyone felt. You know, he was choked up and everyone's choked up.
His games include Corvette, Johnny Mnemonic, NBA Fast Break, Monster Bash, and Revenge from Mars. It's our pleasure to introduce as a first-time speaker, head speaker at the Expo, George Gomez. George?
Hello? Can you hear me? Before I start talking to you, I'm going to show you a few minutes of eye candy just to get you excited, and then we'll talk. So much for the eye candy. There's one more tape. We'll show it last thing, and then we'll do questions later. But first, I want to tell you the story, and I want to tell you the story firsthand. What you're going to hear are my opinions. These are not the opinions of Williams Electronics Games, WMS Industries, etc. That's the disclaimer. Doesn't mean I'm pissed. It doesn't mean that you can't. You know, you can ask me how many games we make, because you know, if I try answering that question, there's a WMS Ninja Strike Team that rappels in from the ceiling and takes me out. So, you know, black ninja suits with WMS on the back.
Female ninja assassins.
If I stand here, can you hear me? Yep. Do I have to be here? Is this good? Okay. You know, in order to really understand where you are at any given point in time, I truly believe that you need to fully realize where you've been. And I think that's really key to everything that we do. Does anybody remember a bad 80s movie called Brainstorm? In this movie, for those who haven't seen it, there's a device with these really cool transducers. It's a helmet, you put it on, and it records your brain waves, and it manages to interpret them such that once I get them on this Brainstorm tape or whatever, you can wear the helmet and you can feel everything I've felt, everything I've seen. It feels like you're living my experience. And I really wish that technology was true, because right now I would make you all put on the helmets and feel what I've felt over the last 2 years. It's really important. I hope that you feel a piece of my story, because the thing about the tale of Pinball 2000 is that it is about passion. It is about a bunch of guys trying to make something happen in an arena that isn't particularly conducive at this particular point in time. So I'm going to take you through the really good stuff, and then I'm going to take you through the really bad stuff, and then we'll talk about it, and it'll be like therapy. So now I want to say a word about one of the most powerful cultures in the history of pinball. And you need to understand a little bit about that culture so that you know where this comes from and why it happened. And that culture I'm talking about is the Williams Engineering Department. 1,000 years from now, when an archaeologist digs over 3401 North California Avenue, besides all the toxic waste from the 1930s transformer production, what they're going to find is they're going to find the clan of pinball. And in this clan, there is all of the things that make up this living, breathing organism made up of all these different guys. I've been really fortunate to have worked in some of the most challenging creative environments in the world, I think. I worked at Marvin Glass & Associates, a premier designer and inventor of toys, inventing toys, and that was a highly challenging creative environment. In order to sell 3 items a year, I had to invent 52 things, and I had to take those 52 things to prototype and show them to toy companies. That was a challenging creative environment. Williams Electronics Games has, in some ways, raised the bar beyond that. It has been more challenging to work there as a designer, even than it was for me to work at Marvin Glass inventing toys. The reason I went to Williams initially was not what you might think. I did not go there with this dying need to design pinball machines. I went there not necessarily with a love of the game. I went there to challenge myself because I looked at the toys I was designing and I said, I get an LED and a 9-volt and a little Mabuchi motor, and I've got to make this thing cost $14.95 at Toys R Us. And then I looked at pinball, and this was the heyday of Pat Waller's putting $100 mechanisms on a playfield, and I'm thinking that looks pretty fun to me. I want to spend $4,000 making the coolest toy I can make. That drove me there, and the personal challenge of trying to find this environment that would challenge me again. Every 6 years I get bored and I do something else. I worked at Midway in the early '80s on video games. I did pixel graphics, 1 pixel at a time. I designed these really cool controls and worked on games, and I got bored with that and I moved on. Williams to me was this place where the lore of Steve Ritchie, guys that could design 15,000 pinball machines for a title and essentially live life completely. 15,000 machines, no big deal. Do it every time up. This was challenging. I wanted to see if I could swim with the sharks, and that's what drove me there. Now, once I got in there and I started working on pinball, pinball kind of saturated me and became a part of me. I think the way that it is a part of you. And it's something that's taken me by surprise. I really did not expect that. I expected it to be another cool design job, and I thought that I was going to get my jollies by playing with, cool toys and cool tools, and this company was going to, make me a star. At Williams Electronics, spiritual leaders walk the halls. We're talking about passionate men with insane visions and bulletproof demeanors that insist that they're right. You have never seen grown men screaming and yelling at the top of their lungs in the hallway fighting over a multi-ball rule. You would think that we were talking about nuclear proliferation with the amount of passion that goes into the product that we make. The nuance, of the return off the right ball guide, to the right flipper on that loop shot. Is it too high on the flipper? These discussions are endless. They consume us. You're talking about the most brutal critics in pinball. They make you guys look easy. And the reason I say that is because the guys inside Williams that design pinball machines not only criticize you, but they know what the answer is to the problem. You guys criticize me, but sometimes you don't know what the answer is. There is such pride in this engineering department that we have never once reverse engineered the competition's product. We have never brought in a machine to find out what made it tick. And I have to tell you that Ferrari reverse engineers Lamborghini's product. But there is an element of pride that says the competition is down the hall, not down the street. So this is a flavor for this culture, this environment. You know, at night, John Papaduke says that the ghosts of the great designers walk the halls. And when you're in your office at 2 o'clock in the morning, all day long you were sure that ball guy was in the right place. And for some ungodknown reason, you know, at 3 o'clock in the morning you decided to move it a 16th of an inch. That's, I think, the inspiration of those guys. I hope. It was this passionate group that was repeatedly challenged to step up and try to fix the business of pinball. Management said we need to make it profitable. The world has changed. No one wants what you guys are doing. You're boring everybody. Invent something new. We just cannot continue to repeat ourselves. We have put umpteen million heads on the playfield. We have created layer upon layer of ramps. We have convoluted rule sets, we have video modes, we have all this stuff, and guess what? It's not making a difference. All we're doing is just rehashing ourselves. And management says this has got to stop, you have got to come up with something, or we're done, because we just can't exist inside of this economic model. Our company's a business, you've heard that in this forum a lot, and that business has to make sense. Make it fun. That was the criteria. And, you know, make it fun, they said, and they will come. I have been doing leisure entertainment product for 20 years now. And I have to tell you, the other day I played Revenge from Mars in sort of a mental preparation for this, and I spent an hour on the game, and I came away thinking, this is fun. This product is fun. It's entertaining me. I drained my third ball, and my bonus got me the extra ball. I was jazzed. I mean, you can't plan on that, but I was jazzed. It was fun. I'm not so sure that it's enough to make it fun anymore. And this is a personal thing, and it's one of those things that's discussed constantly. Because I think I made a fun game, and we haven't set the world on fire. But more about that later. Management's call to action on this was first answered by John Papaduke with his version of Pinball 2000. His version of Pinball 2000 had a 27-inch monitor mounted in the back of the back box where the translite typically is. And I have to tell you that engineering as a whole believed in this and followed this vision for about 6 months. I was somehow troubled. I was very troubled because I was around in the 80s, working at Midway. I saw Caveman, I played Caveman, Baby Pac-Man, Granny the Gators was gnawing at me. These things were bothering me. The lack of interactivity was making me feel like, you know, we really need to put the video someplace where we can do something with it. But we went in this direction, and I'll tell you, this business of interacting with the ball and the video was troublesome because there wasn't an easy way to do it. There really wasn't an easy way to do it. There was a lot of conversation, but it wasn't, you know, you see it, you see the after effect and you think, oh yeah, clever, awesome, obvious. It wasn't that way at that particular moment in time. Neil Castro, then chairman of the company, calls a meeting of the engineering. And at this meeting, basically the key elements of game design, the designers and the programmers, maybe a few other people. Larry's running the meeting. He wants to know what's going on with Pinball 2000. I mean, we're spending their money. Every day that goes on is a day that, you know, we're essentially spending their money. During the course of this meeting, Larry reports on progress. You know, yeah, Neil, we're doing this, that, and the other thing. Neil says, who here does not believe this is the best direction that we need to be taking? This is the direction that we need to be following. And, you know, 3 hands went up. And, you know, there was a silence. And, you know, the 3 hands, Mark Buena, Pat Lawler, George Gomez, you know, absolutely known troublemakers. So, you know, what's your problem? Well, it's not interactive. You know, it's just, you know, we're playing up there, we're playing down here, we're playing up there. We're already doing that with the dot matrix. This is not going to set anybody on fire. And, you know, Neil has a way with words. He says, well, boys, this is the direction the company's going in, and basically there are 3 choices. And those choices are, you jump on the bandwagon and you help these guys out as best you can and follow this vision of the company. You invent something better, or you get the hell out, because it's that simple. There is no room for dissension at this point in time. We have to be together. We have to make this work. At the time, I was dating this woman in Boston, and the day of the meeting, we were going to San Francisco for, you know, one of those girlfriend romantic weekend things. You know, she sets it up, and you just go, yeah, no problem. I'll meet you at the airport, catch a plane. The meeting's at 1 o'clock. I got a 3 o'clock flight out, and I call her and say, you know, I might have to meet you in San Francisco because this is not looking good. It was a terrible weekend. You know, I carry one of these, you know, and you ever open up my one of these, it's got all these drawings in it, and God forbid, you know, some psychoanalyst would get a hold of my notebook from that weekend, because I was totally distracted and just kind of did this all, and, you know, like I said, it wasn't a good weekend. So I come back, and Pat comes to see me, and he says, you know, that meeting was about gauging our commitment to this product. And I don't think he walked away feeling real warm and fuzzy about this. I think, you know, we're in danger. We have lived under this danger for a while now in engineering, but every time it gets really close, it's very scary. You know, they're going to yank the plug, okay? They're going to yank the plug. We start talking about trying to make this video interactive, and we decide that, you know, we have experience with this mirror technology from the 80s. In the 80s, video games could not afford the massive amounts of memory that you have in video games today. So video games are made up of tiny little things, you know, 32 pixels by 32 pixels big, and they were called sprites or picture blocks, and you could move a lot of them, but you couldn't draw scenery. You couldn't make, you know, I couldn't draw a planet or a city, etc. So what we used to do is we would leave the video move, and then we would take plastic and cardboard and create the scenery and marry the 2 things with something called a combining mirror. It's a see-through mirror that takes the 2 objects and reflects them together so that to the eye they appear to be together. That's exactly what that is. Now, I did not invent the combining mirror. Some guy at Disney invented the combining mirror. What I invented is the interaction between this virtual object on the playfield and the pinball. And our Eureka deals with that little bit of technology. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I told you about what this is. In the chaos after the meeting, Larry says, well, you know, if you and Pat think you can do something, you should do it, because this doesn't look great, okay? That meeting was a troublesome meeting. It basically splintered engineering. It splintered this group, which is why I wanted to talk to you about the culture of that group. When we came out of that meeting, Dwight Sullivan said to me, you know, you guys don't have a better idea. You're just being assholes, and you just, you're just causing trouble. You know, there's no better idea here. You know, you just shut up and get on the bandwagon. John's mad at me, John Popiuk, because, you know, this is his thing, and I basically said it's not good enough. So coming out of that meeting, it wasn't great. So we we start talking about doing something, and Pat's going, you know, I got all these shiny new tools set up in my garage. We really ought to do it off-site because, you know, Dwight might come in your room and let's say something about the thing we're building, and then, you know, you're going to feel bad, and it's not going to be cool. So, now, let me talk to you about Eureka. You know, you hear about Eureka, you know, this thing inventors do, you know, when they discover, realize, envision. If you've played Monster Bash, you know that Eureka does not happen when Dr. Frankenstein decides that he's going to animate a guy made from parts from a bunch of other dead guys. That's not when Eureka happens. He envisions, I'm going to animate this guy. I'm going to go to the cemetery, I'm going to send Igor, and he's going to come back with these body parts. I'm going to put them together, I'm going to bring this guy to life. That's not when Eureka happens. Eureka happens when he throws the switch, and the electrodes energize Frankenstein, and the table comes down, and Frankenstein comes to life, at which point, you know, he screams, it's alive. That's his version of Eureka, and that is Eureka. So now I'm going to describe Eureka to you as it happened, what I consider to be the first time in Pinball 2000. The wonderful thing about Pinball 2000 is that Eureka blessed us throughout the process. If it hadn't, if everyone hadn't stepped up and been an inventor at some point in time, you wouldn't be seeing Pinball 2000. Pinball 2000 would not have happened. So it's a Friday night, and it's about 9 o'clock, it's late. During the development of Monster Bash, and engineering is pretty much deserted except for Lyman Sheets, programmer extraordinaire, working away on finishing touches for Monster Bash. And I'm in my office with my foam core, my trusty hot glue gun, and all the elements, you know, my X-Acto knife, and the things that I use to do what I do. And I start building that model that you saw. You know, here's the model. It's quarter scale. 3/16 foam core is precisely 3/4 of an inch at quarter scale. Piece of plexiglass. If you look in here, if you look closely, you'll find a slide from the movie Johnny Mnemonic. It's kind of what I had laying on my desk. So I made this thing, and I started screwing around with it. You know, if you look at the playfield drawing that I shrunk and printed, it's a Monster Bash. So I take this thing and I put it together, and I take my flashlight, and I go, oh my God, Eureka! This is going to work. So it's 9 o'clock, and the phone rings in Marengo, Illinois. Pat Waller picks up the phone, and yeah, Pat, this thing's going to work, man. This thing, you know, the video on the playfield. Yeah, okay. Come on, you're coming over tomorrow, right? Yeah. Pat, click. I go running down the hallway to see Mr. Sheets, and I say, Lyman, look at this, our future. Look at it, check it out. Lyman looks up, and he goes, look at the board. Will you look at the board? Look at the board, look at that display. He's working on Monster Bash. And, you know, to Lyman, getting rid of the bog in the dot matrix display is what separates the men from the boys as far as programming. Okay? So he starts, you know, it's about IRQ, blah, blah, blah. Well, then Lyman, look! It's our future! You know, look at this display. Nobody wants to listen. Okay. Following day, off to Marengo. That lives way, way, way out there. I mean, I don't know what you know about Marengo. I don't know what you know about the local geography, but it's out there. And the only cool thing is I've got this brand new M3, and these roads are deserted. And it became a ritual that the very first time, this thing was about a month old, and I got it up to 130 miles an hour before I ran out of nerves, and then tool into Pat's garage. You know? And this became my adrenaline rush. I'm out of here at the end of every day at Pat's during this time. It was great fun. Clears the head. So we're in this garage, and in this garage, you know, we're talking about Williams, and we're talking about pinball, and we're cutting wood, and we're putting that thing together, that hollow pin thing. That we took an old bottom, and we, basically started building all this stuff. And what we did is we did monitor weightlifting. There's a 19-inch monitor in there left over from when I used to try to develop 80s video games. And that's the reason there's an Amiga hooked to it. In the 80s, there was a period of my life in which I was trying to pitch game ideas. And I was running around to anybody who would listen to me saying, look, this is a great game idea. And, more often than not, they just kind of blew me off. But I had this trusty Amiga with an old D-Paint program. I had a bunch of images from games I tried to pitch, that big blue robot that you saw in the videotape. I was trying to fire it up for you today, but the Amiga was as cantankerous today as it was when we were working on it in the garage. So we built that thing, and we did monitor weightlifting. Hold the monitor up, Pat. What do you think? Oh yeah, that's it. Sure. Okay, quick, get a pencil. That's how that thing came about. It came about using this, and then we didn't make any drawings. We just kind of measured this, and I'm measuring, and Pat's sawing. Table saw's cooking. The place is a mess. There's sawdust all over. Patricia, Pat's wife, is bringing out food, and we did this for about 3 weeks, mostly at nights and weekends, because I was still working on Monster Bash, and Mr. Sheets didn't want, his vision was, the Pinball 2000. He said, yeah, whatever, dude, that's nonsense. So during that time, he just was engrossed in Monster Bash, as he's wont to do, and so we built this thing, we brought it in, and basically everybody was jazzed. Everybody, we brought in this conference room, crowd of people, everybody from engineering, everybody's like, wow, look at that. Ideas about what to do with it start just pouring out. Everybody in the room's got something to say about it. This is the shift in gears that sends us in this direction. John's a little upset. He's got 6 months in the game. He's got a play field. He's got video. He's got things happening. But eventually, John comes around. And one of the very first things that happens once we get going on this project is that John's team actually brings up the very first true interactive video image on a play field that reacts to a pinball. Cameron Silver programs this thing. It looks like a TIE fighter, because even back then their theme was Star Wars. And it's an old TIE fighter because they haven't gotten any material on the new movie yet. So this TIE fighter hovers around and drops to the center of the play field and kind of hangs around there. And you hit it with the ball and boom, it explodes. And man, that was another eureka. And we're all walking in there going, wow, look at that, that's cool, it's going to do what we said. So the whole process is full of these things. And these are the things that made it. These are the things that made it all happen. During that time, one of the problems was that when it was determined that Star Wars was so far out, management decided that's too far. You guys have to do something before that. So what they wanted was they didn't want to change the schedule, even though we essentially had abandoned the platform and picked up a new platform and started in that direction. They did not want to change the schedule. They wanted the old schedule to fit the new design. So John's team gets relegated to second game, and they begin searching for volunteers for first game. And, Lyman wasn't real happy. When I went in and said, Lyman, we really ought to do this. And he is still up to his ears in Phantom Flip, And would not let that die. So, we volunteer, and now the fun really starts, because now it's not about making mock-ups. Now we got to make this thing real, and we do have this list that we talked about in attempting to address what we thought were problems, the business side of pinball, the functionality, etc. Are just as important in some respects as is it fun. They are equally vital to the process. So we begin this process with Larry running these weekly meetings in which all of the problems that were currently pending were addressed. what are we going to do about this? The Germans want a handguard that is accessible to location, but you know, the guy at the location can't have access to the money. All these different problems began, and slowly but surely, ideas emerged from the collective 45, 50 people that we had working on this thing to solve every problem. It was an environment unlike any I've ever worked in, because literally we invented new things every week. Whether they were, you know, the skid rails for the bottom of the playfield so that you could get a playfield out quickly, the connector bus at the back, the concept of you know, transporting these playfields easily, just 1,000 details that if you ever have the opportunity to dive into a PIN 2000 and analyze, you will discover. In the midst of this, management is still very impatient, very, very impatient. Show and tells constantly, disruptive, absolutely harassing show and tells. It's the nature of the beast, you know, and Larry had a really good anti-executive force field, but every once in a while, the sucker would go down. And then, boys are in shit. So, you know, there's a chapter, when I write the book on Pinball 2000, you know, which is going to read some, you know, the title, I can see it, it's going to say, Pinball 2000, you know, the game designer's view, or some such. There's going to be a chapter called Inventors All. And Inventors All really talks about those thousands of inventions that happen in the nick of time, miraculously, to make this thing work. I mean, I could talk to you for hours about each and every one of those things that happen miraculously, but I can't. So we go to London. We haven't tested games yet. We are so buggy. You know, this thing is, it's unstable at best. But the reception in London, and to the company's credit, they absolutely totally supported us. They threw one hell of a party at the Museum of Natural History. You know, black tie, killer food, you know, pretty girls, you know, the works. And it was great. You know, we're like walking around and we got these games on the floor, and there's, you know, we're up against our sister company has got some heavy hitters, you know, Hydro Thunder, video games of note. And when those people got out of the presentation in which the tapes were shown, each of the theme tapes, this is, you know, it's a normal procedure for us. We show these tapes to our customers, our distributors, and few operators, and then we let them at the games. And when the doors opened to this room that the pinballs were in, there was an island, there was a couple of islands of revenges, you know, back to back in a circle. They were mobbed, and you know, there's photographs and videotape of this, and it was an amazing thing. You know, it was an amazing thing that this hunger for a product that did something, and at that particular point in time, that was the product. London came and went, games went on test. The coolest thing about the internet this time around was I really enjoyed all the messages that people send in. It was really exciting to go to work every day, 15, 20 messages. You know, this is so cool, I can't believe this, my favorite of all time. You know, someday I'll have the Pinball 2000 thing framed, and, you know, right underneath it's going to say, the guy who sent me the message, and maybe he's in this room, all it said was, "You've blown my fucking mind." Whoever you are, you made my day. That's all. You know, one little sentence. I had to deal with the guys who were criticizing it and hadn't seen it yet, too. You know, that never ceases to amaze me. And I was telling Larry, I said, geez, you know, this website thing was a big mistake. You know, I got all these guys going to the website, and all of a sudden I got a critique like the guy played it for an hour, and he hasn't seen it yet. So, anyway, I just want to talk briefly about, you know, production. Production was was, again, one of those problematic things that, startup, and if you got one of the early games, you probably didn't get a perfect game. You have to understand that one of the challenges of doing this game was that everything was going on concurrently. And typically that's not the case. What I mean by that is you've got an operating system that the game runs on being written at the same time that the game is being written. And you've got a cabinet, mechanical platform going together at the same time that I'm designing playfields. We don't know, yesterday the playfield was 46 inches long, today the playfield's 43 inches long. The cabinet's doing this, and I have to say I drove some of those things, and we'll talk about why. But all of these things are happening concurrently. We have new artists. We've never designed a video game in pinball, and we have new artists with new tools, and these guys are teaching themselves 3D video art overnight. I had this guy built because Marty the Martian, because it was going to take the video boys a month to draw this, and so what I did is I hired one of our trusty sculptors, and I told him, I said, I'm going to make Marty the Martian. I want him to be like this. And he goes, what are you going to do with it? I said, I'm making a trophy. Because, I didn't want him to know what we were doing. We took this guy, and he's an outside vendor, by the way. So we took this guy, and we scanned him. We sent him to a house that digitizes three-dimensional objects. We scanned him, and we brought him back into Lightwave, the program that we use to draw our video art now. And then we worked from there. Now today, we can draw this. We can draw this in probably a day and a half. We can draw this color, texture, the whole shebang. It takes another week to animate it, but we can do this. We couldn't at the time, so we were moving. Everything is going on. If you come up and you get a chance to look at some of the drawings, you'll notice that the tops of the back the back boxes are called test fixture number 1 and test fixture number 2. In an effort to maintain security about what we were doing, because we were so excited about it, we used 2 cabinet vendors. We sent the tops to one guy, and we called them test fixtures. We sent the bottoms to the other guy. Now, the guy looks at the bottom, he knows what that is, right? He said, look, it looks like a pinball machine. It might be 3 inches shorter, but it looks like a pinball machine. But you never know what test fixture number 1 is. So, if you talk to the Jedi, if you talk to the guys that worked on Star Wars, they have a story like mine about their product. And the story I've told you doesn't include every little nuance. And it doesn't include every little nuance because I want you to buy my book. But, you want a happy ending, don't you? You want a happy ending. Our heroes struggling to overcome incredible odds succeed. I get the girl, right off into the sunset. I designed Pin 2000 with all my heart and all my skill. But these are dark times for us. Remember, these are my opinions. This is not an official statement from anyone at WMS. These are my opinions. My spider sense is tingling. My spider sense has been on fire for the last month. Pinball will survive. I'm here to tell you that. I fear that our company may have lost the ability to make it make economic sense. And if that's the case, being that it's a business, they might choose not to be in the pinball business anymore. The engineering department that I so lovingly spoke of is in danger. And the brands that we recognize are in danger. And Gary Stern might just be the last man standing. Please remember that that I tried to elevate the art. Williams has been very good to me. the flood of memories is indeed a brainstorm. If Black Friday comes, my brothers and I in pinball will live to fight another day. I have one more tape, and then we will do questions. All right, fire away.
Are the videos available for sale?
I don't think so.
Feel kind of things that the image is always in the same place. That it's created a design, a playfield design problem for you guys. You know, right now it's not a big issue because it's fresh, but as you move further down the line, you kind of eliminated the design.
Yeah.
How do you handle that?
You know what? You've only begun to see what we can do with Pinball 2000, and to me that's what's sad. If Pinball 2000 goes away and doesn't make it, we think of the first dot matrix game that you saw, and think of the things that we didn't do in that first game. You know, I wasn't even around for that, but I mean the things that they didn't do, and then think of what a dot matrix game is like, was like at the state of the art, you know, Monster Mash, in terms of that, that particular genre. So I guess what I'm telling you is you've seen two games that were built under duress. I mean, they were built in a very short period of time, under a lot of stress to get something done and get it kind of working and let's go. If you look at, I've seen Pat's game. Pat's game is number 3. Pat Lawler and Louis Koziarz have a game going that really departs from what John did, it departs from what I did. The video's in the same place, but they've chosen to, I mean, their targets are essentially look like video targets that are absolutely integrated into the three-dimensional architecture of the playfield. So something sitting there looks like it's, you know, it's, I mean, they've worked the ramp into it, everything, it's a different approach. And that is the approach that, you know, that Pat and I talked about a long time ago, and he's doing it. There's a lot more, he's had a lot more time to pay attention to lighting. The things that you've complained about in the first 2 games are things that I think can be improved substantially. We don't think of it as a limitation. Yes, if all you've seen are the first 2 games, you're going to feel that way. There's no doubt about it. And you know, I guess, you know, forgive us. It's you know, we didn't get it perfect.
I'd just like to add something to what George said. If you look at the accomplishment, you're looking at an endeavor that was accomplished in the same time frame that we used to design conventional pinball. Now, conventional pinball, every designer has a history of games before him that he can draw off of. This is totally fresh. What was accomplished by this first team is just something that's remarkable. And it should be obvious to everybody in this room that the content is just so much more. The amount of creative juices is just so much more of what went into any game prior to that. And yet the amount of time that was allowed was the same. So the accomplishment for that team was just unbelievable.
Sir.
After RFM came out, there was reports on the internet about how the pinball division finally turned a profit for the first time in a long time.
We did.
Can you comment on the management's opinion of the potential that would seem to bring?
Yeah, I think you know, it's public, so I probably can tell you, you know, we made $1 million the quarter that we sold RFM, and if you make $1 million every quarter with pinball, you know, I think we'd be in the game. I think that some of it has to do with the fact that our inconsistency, if you will, affects us, and also the amount of money that it takes to develop a pinball machine as opposed to all of the other things that you could do with the money, given the return. I mean, that's as much of an answer as I can give you. Don't get me wrong. you know, Williams has been just a wonderful, tremendous place. And this company has allowed me to walk in with a harebrained scheme like this and turn it into a product. So, you know, don't for 1 minute, it's a business and they have to make business decisions. And I'm a designer and I have to design stuff. And, you know, maybe it's pinball. It's been toys, it's been pinball, it's been video games, it's been whatever. But we do what we gotta do, you know?
Now, what about Star Wars?
What was the question?
You know, I think it's doing fine. I think it's doing fine. I think that, you know, I think the amount of steam that we've gotten from the movie's been a little disappointing.
Before Revenge from Mars came out, there was a lot of speculations on RGP how the first Pinball 2000 would look like. Do you and your team read this, and do you get influenced by these messages?
Well, actually, I guess you could say that. We do read it, and it really amused us.
A lot of us were surprised at the decision to not include the replay features. Were there bloody meetings over that one?
Oh yeah. Here's the deal. Here's the deal. I'm here to tell you that my opinion today is that we made a mistake on replay, and we made a mistake on Boston. I'm telling you that right now. That's my opinion. At the time, I didn't have a strong enough opinion, and some of us did. It's an opportune time to change the play mechanic when you're introducing a new platform. So if you're ever going to screw around with that kind of stuff, that's the time to do it. I think that we weren't, I guess I was a little surprised at the backlash. We were trying to balance. You've got this new thing, and it's very compelling. You know, it's cool just in itself. And we're trying to balance that against, we need to make it make money. And so maybe it's cool enough that this, if you take this away, it's not going to make a difference. There's a lot of, the replay thing has been talked about for so many years. You know, I know Roger's opinion very well. You can talk to Roger and he'll tell you, look, you know, look at Steve Epstein's operation in New York. You know, operated for years without replay, successfully, best location in the country, no replay. You know, I know Larry felt very strong about the replay situation. He drove that, and it's something that, like all of pinball, it's discussed and discussed and discussed, and sometimes we take a shot, you know, and we got to do that. We have to try stuff. Well, my personal feeling is you got to have it in. I got such a backlash on it that I would say, and I did it twice. You know, I tried it on NBA Fast Break, and you know, quickly had to backpedal.
You have here what's obviously a great vision, which I hope is the first one. But when you were putting the first Pin 2000 together, what were you most proud of, and what are you most disappointed in?
Well, I tell you, I'm incredibly proud of the effort of Pin 2000. The thing that Pin 2000. My disappointment is, as I mentioned, I fear for it. You know, I don't know what kind of life it has, and I fear that these ideas that all of us have about cool things that we could do with it next won't see the light of day. That's a disappointment to me, and that's a disappointment that may not bear fruit. You know, as far as it's not my best game. You know, my personal feeling is that the best two games I've ever done were Monster Bash and Corvette. Those are my favorites. Those are, you know, they were. Doing a game, you know, is if you're illuminated at that particular point in time about that game, and you totally live it and feel it, the game will be a lot better. And it's not that I didn't do that with this game, but the reality of it is that the platform consumed some part of my creative energy. I proudly tell you that my fingerprint is on every piece of a Pinball 2000. There isn't a box, screw, bracket thing that I didn't influence in one way or another, and I'm proud of that. I'm very, very proud of that. You know, What am I disappointed in? I'm disappointed as hell that the programmers never got those damn boxes out of my face when I do something. If I get a, you know, I mean, these are things that would be polished away on future Pinball 2000s. There's no reason I need to step on the image of Abraham Lincoln, the Robo Lincoln figure, with a box telling me the score. Absolutely no reason. And that's a polish thing. Just like we spent hours and hours and hours choreographing a dot matrix display in a light show, eventually we will get to the polish level in a Pinball 2000. And there won't be a goofy score box in my face stepping on the graphic that I spent, you know, that the artist spent hours and hours making. So yeah, I have disappointments. You know, Revenge from Mars was picked because it was really important that we did not need to pursue blind alleys as far as a theme. I don't know if I covered that on my, and we wanted to go into the street with a theme that operators and players had a warm fuzzy about. And we didn't have time, you know, I mean, if I showed up tomorrow and I said, let's make a hot rod game, I gotta spend time figuring out what that is. You know, I mean, I paint in broad strokes and then refine it. And I didn't have time to do that. So, you know, let's do a sequel to something tight and strong, AFM. And that's what we did. Yeah, just because it's something that's talked about all the time. In an attempt to make the game make sense, the business side is important, and every dollar means something. And we have somewhere in here there's a drawing, and I brought it specifically for that reason, of the nested cabinet panels. You know, you got a 4x8 sheet of plywood. And if I can get all four sides of the game, top and bottom, out of that sheet of plywood, I save a substantial amount of money. So we did that. In order to do that, and the problem with that is that in doing so, the only way I could make all that stuff fit was to go to a 43-inch playthrough. And it didn't scare me because I remember High Speed and Black Knight, and I said, well, they're 42, you know? Yeah, we're used to these 46 inchers, and they're nice. But, so I'm going to go 43. It's the most I can stuff in the thing. And still try to make the cabinet make sense monetarily. We fought the cost thing every inch of the way. And I'm not real sure that, you know, I mean, I promise you that given more time, it would cost even less. But, you know, you do what you can inside of what you have.
In the Pinball Journal issue that came out that was dedicated to Pinball 2000, there was a mention about collapsible legs that were possibly considered. Can you talk about that and what problem that was going to solve?
Yeah, I think in one of these, when you sit down to brainstorm, you brainstorm and you think of all these cool things that you could do. What if I didn't have to unscrew the legs? What if I just, you know, flip the lever and snap the leg up, and you know, the leg protects the bottom of the cabinet, and etc. So yeah, I mean, I wish I could show you the list. There's some cool stuff in there. You know, maybe 10 years from now we're still making them. We can do that.
One of the selling points of the Pinball 2000 is the huge ones are going to be kiddable.
Yeah.
Is that going to happen still?
Listen, I don't know if we're going to have it still. Yeah, I would say it's in the works. There's 500, I think, Star Wars kits or something being sent to Germany as we speak.
We've got a bar in Amsterdam that can get about $300 or $400 a week out of the Revenge from Mars.
Really?
It's basically a culture of pinball acts. We bring good people into the fold just by being around it so much. But I don't feel a sense of sort of pop culture action like that move forward where non-pinball players are talking about, where you're seeing movies and choice movie stars that are taking it in their causes. But there's some sort of faction or pop culture side of it take it to that next level.
It'll come.
Well, obviously, one of the reasons to do Pinball 2000 the way that we did it was to try to attract a new player. I'm not sure that we've done that yet. And I do believe that I don't want something that burns bright and hot, and burns out. I don't think it's unnatural for a product to take some time to take. And know, I have nothing, you know, I see, I've nothing against mechanical action pinball, as my brothers, you know, across town have labeled what we used to do. I was a big proponent of we need a high price line and we need a low price line. I don't want to leave any money on the table. I want to compete in that business too. But that's not my choice to make, you know. So I think that if it takes, it's not going to be because I ran ads. Maybe $10 million of advertising helped me, but I think that it has to happen because people are really standing in front of it, having fun and liking it. And if you've been to the arcades, the problem that we face is a universal coin-op problem. It's not just a pinball problem. Our brothers across the street at Midway, their arcade stuff isn't doing any better than our arcade stuff. They have this wonderful cushion called Sega and Nintendo. You know, they sell their product. They make way more money selling a CD-ROM with Hydro Thunder on it than they do making a $4,000 standalone Hydro Thunder. They make way more money. I wish we had that. If we had something like that, then right now it wouldn't be but the entire coin-operated game business is hurting. It's so hurting. I tell people, look, go to the arcades, stay in there. Who's in there? Galo is a ghost town. It's unbelievable. I fear for the business, you know.
Related to that, were there any discussions of perhaps changing or trying to influence the marketing model for more of a push to the operators as opposed to a pull from your end users?
Yeah, it's talked all. It's all of these things are talked about. All of these things are talking about, and there's problems with that too. You know.
I'm talking as an ignorant consumer. I don't know how to fix games. If you make it work, I'll push the buttons probably at the wrong time. But I know personally, and even with my kids along, I'll drop $10 into a quarter machine, but I'll think twice about plugging 4 quarters into one machine.
Right.
And that's just a mental thing for me that I need to be educated on.
Yeah, and you're not the only one who needs to be re-educated on that. And we've tried many, many times. I feel, I'll tell you, I really feel that every other form of entertainment doesn't cost what it did 20 years ago. I'm not certain why it is that ours has to. And perhaps it's a cultural thing that I can't change, but a movie doesn't cost what it used to. The popcorn doesn't, the pop doesn't, the comic books don't. Here's your entertainment dollar. What are you doing? You're 15 years old, you're at the mall, and you're spending around. Well, gee, why is the pinball machine still going to cost 50 cents? I'm giving you a lot more for your money. That would help.
This morning we heard from your competitor, and they seem to have a real good licensing program, especially the secondary licensing with Harley-Davidson. I haven't seen that as much in Star Wars, where you'd think you'd have a really good licensing program there with movie theaters and the studio.
Yeah. We have from time to time pursued those avenues. And, Roger's here and he'll tell you that, Roger and I did it with Corvette. We had, stuff at the, available to the dealers and selling it to Corvette dealers, and got put one in the waiting area of your service department, and there's a guy in Cleveland, our distributor in Cleveland Coin. He did a tremendous job taking it to the fan market. The same thing they're doing. The Harley-Davidson owner, Ron Gold, Cleveland Coin, did a tremendous job. He sold. After all the distributors were done with their stuff, he came back to us and he said, give me 600 games. I'm going to sell them 300 at a time. And he sold these games for, $5,000 to a guy with a Corvette in his garage.
Just as a comment, only because there was a few years ago, if you guys remember, maybe you don't want to remember, we actually did Harley Davidson. Worked with Harley Davidson corporate, all of their dealers had the expectation that there were going to be literally thousands, if not tens of thousands of Harley owners out there who would buy anything Harley. Went down to Daytona to unveil the game, talked to a lot of doctors, a lot of bikers, whatever else who were Harley fans, wanting to know where can I get them, when can I get them. Everything petered out. Dealers didn't step up. We went back in, and I'm not trying to tell tales out of school, nor am I trying to comment on whether we had less success than potentially Stern Pinball will now have as a successful venture. But we actually went back in and did a separate run specifically for Harley. Wrote us a check, said these are a number of games. I have to tell you that it was 10% of what they had originally talked about doing. And it was a tough battle internally to go back with a 3-figure number as compared to the 4-figure number that we had anticipated with all of their dealers. And there are thousands literally around the world who are all going to step up and all the fan base. Now, conversely, since we didn't do a major run on that, from what I understand, I guess again, from what we see in the trades, I guess some of the commentary that the competition has been saying is that see if you can find the original Bally Harley Davidson for the same price. If it's like double or triple the price point, I guess his expectation is there's great resale value. That's about what it amounts to. At the time, nobody was willing to stand up when it needed to be stood up for. It's only after the fact, 6 months, a year, 2 years later, it's already too late. I wish them well. I hope that they can do it. George commented we tried it. And I'll tell you right now, in FAO Schwartz's catalog, you can buy a Star Wars pinball for about triple what it will cost you buying it on the floor here. But they are already taking
What's your
orders.
programmer?
Well, and that's, again, that's part of the marketing model problem, because if you look back at Corvette or Harley Davidson, you're having Corvette or Harley Davidson dealers that know nothing about pinball trying to sell pinball. You have normal pulling off distributors that in most cases don't want to deal with both the home market or the collector market, okay? There's not a good retail push. I mean, FAO Schwartz, okay, fine, yeah, there's going to be a lot of people who will spend $6,000 for a pinball, but if you can find a better way to sell them for $4,000,
That would be $8,000 for a pinball.
I think I can answer your question. And I'm not going to be the guy who's going to answer this. There's this wonderful man we used to have working for us who died a little over 1.5 years ago named Joe Dillon, who was our head of sales. And the answer to your question goes something like this. We do not build consumer product. We do not build consumer product. Nothing we build is consumer product. Okay? People who are, for example, in this room, who buy a pinball machine and take it home are way out of the ordinary. Okay, way out of the ordinary. We build games that sit in bars and taverns, bowling alleys. Okay, it's an industrial product. It's never meant to be a home product. It's never polished enough from a consumer standpoint who doesn't have enough knowledge to deal with it to make it a home product. Okay? The economic model of what we do is based on we're a manufacturer, we're General Motors, and we sell to distribution, which are General Motors dealers, our distributors, okay, who then take that product and move it through the system. And the reason for that is very simple. Okay, it's a very simple reason. As a manufacturer, we need to know that we're good to go to order 2,000 sets of parts before we start building something, okay? And we need to know that we've got people all around the world that are going to take that economic burden off of us. That's our distribution. They're the people who step up and say, I'll take 20, I'll take 30, I'll take 40, okay? That spreads out the risk. If we took all the risk upon ourselves to take those games, okay, and say we're going to sell them straight to the operator or straight to the end user, for example, okay, we economically could not do that. If you multiply the amount of parts it takes, we have a 5-week lead time. George will tell you better than anybody on a game. It's 5 to 6 week lead time to get parts.
And it costs a lot of money to set up an assembly line with tooling and parts to build these things. We can't, we can't overnight decide that tomorrow we're building something else, So, somebody, am I supposed to be out here now? Somebody was...
Nothing's next.
Rob.
Rob's already buying equipment.
Yeah.
The auction's at 5:30.
I heard Rob's buying us all a beer.
Must have been Rob's here.
Last call for alcohol.
Keep going.
Keep going. On a roll, George.
Sir.
A couple other design questions. I know I read a little bit about the way the speakers are placed, and I wanted to know more of the history of that. By the way, I like it.
Yeah, we have a guy on the staff, Andy Eloff. I gave him a Supersonic hardware credit. I wrote the credits. Andy Eloff is an electrical engineer with a lot of experience designing sound stuff, speakers, amplifiers, etc. And we worked with the speaker manufacturer to develop precisely the volume behind the speaker and the position of the speaker, and of course the hardware that drives it. So all of that stuff was not, it wasn't a, put it where you can fit it kind of thing. And that's why they are where they are.
I'm sure some of your competitors probably buy your products and then reverse engineering, take some of the good ideas and incorporate it in their machines. Why wouldn't you want to do some of the same if somebody, a user likes a certain feature of somebody else's machine?
Right. I guess maybe we're too proud. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't mean that we don't play their games. It just means that we have a certain standard, and we try to design to it. Yeah. These are obviously whitewoods. They're all Martian whitewoods. This particular guy is the old size. You can see that. And so this is my first whitewood before we ran into the cabinet cost too much problem.
Hold it up.
So they'll be around all weekend, and you can check them out. You'll notice an elevator that we didn't end up using, a Bob elevator, and I can't tell you what I was going to do with the Bob elevator, because that will trigger the Ninja Strike Team. You will notice the elevator. Then I went over here next. This is the first of the short whitewoods. And you'll notice some differences, the wire ramps, which I really like a lot, and of course cost too much. And so you'll also notice the little catcher. The catcher grew to humongous proportions because it never failed. I percentage the whitewood, I get every shot in the thing. And as soon as it gets into the programmer's office, guys start complaining that the ball's bouncing out. So, the catcher on the final game is what it had to be in order to satisfy everybody. You'll also notice a few other things here, like I delivered the ball from the front instead of the back. You'll notice that off the catcher, I didn't go into the jets like I do in the final game. I go into the ramp. And I believe Keith Johnson suggested, once you throw the jets, it's still a nice feed, and we have a little bit more action, and we were looking for a reason to do something more with the jets. So you'll see that. Then we come over here, and this is a lot closer to the final deal. The other thing you'll notice in the whitewoods is right about now, we're tightening up the rule set, and so the insert layout reflects the final one a little bit more. In these particular ones, I was just placing inserts, not knowing exactly where we were going. Which is always, there's nothing fancy about that, it's just the way it always happens. In the beginning, you just throw a bunch of lights in the thing, and then you start writing down rules as you go.
Yeah, and on a little bit different section, Cactus Canyon, there's a reference on the playbill that thanks to George Gomez. Can you tell us what your involvement with that?
Yeah. The designer of Cactus Canyon, Tom Capera, is a very close friend of mine, and he was my project engineer on 3 of my games. He was my project engineer on Corvette, John Mnemonic, and Fast Break. And after Fast Break, Tom one day sheepishly came to see me and said, you know, I want your job. And at that point, you know, there's 2 answers. And one answer, you know, one thing that you can do is you can say, no, you're not smart enough, you know, you'll never be able to do this. And the other answer is, sounds good to me, how can I help? So that's all I did. I said, sounds good to me, how can I help? And let him do what he does.
Is Papa Duke still pissed off?
No. You know, pissed off is pissed off. You know, I mean, it happens when you work as closely and you're as passionate about what you do as we are. It happens all the time. And you know, we coexist and we're fine. And John and I are friends. No, it's you know, I think at some point in time, you know, John had the strength and the vision to you know, pick up the gauntlet when somebody threw it down, and he went, you know.
Yeah, John would probably be the first one to tell you that he really wishes he could be here. In preparations for the show, John hurt his back, so John probably won't be here this weekend. He was in the hospital 2 nights ago. He just got out, so we don't know if he's going to be here or not.
Yes.
It's pointed about a lot of sports and stuff in the graphics. Would you maybe like to have like a stop matrix or something to hold the constants more?
No, I just think that I think there's an elegant way to display information inside the platform. And in some ways, we discovered it late, didn't have a chance to implement it. And in other ways, even what we discovered will evolve. So no, I don't want another display. I really, the magic of the combining mirror is that I've got you looking where I want you looking. I mean, and yeah, you've all noticed, you've all played it. You know that the first time you went up to it, you know, you were still confused as hell, and you don't know where the ball went and everything else. And you know, you got used to it. And as the games get better, and the virtual target gets used more as a virtual target as opposed to a movie screen, I think that you'll find that it feels very natural. It feels very natural to us. You know, the very first time I saw a new Corvette, the proportions looked hideous to me. And it took some getting used to it. Now I think, wow, look at that. That's pretty cool. I think that the guys that worked on the new Corvette have been living with that shape for a long time. And you know, you can make the analogy that we're more used to this than you are at this point. And you will become more used to it.
Do you get a point where you have more continuity in the play, where you don't stop and start?
I am convinced. I am absolutely convinced. And I'm not telling you that you know, pinball has really ruined the season. I'm not telling you that at all. I'm telling you that both games can and will coexist. And that 2000s, if the company has this, you know, I mean, if a miracle happens and we continue to, you know, grow and make money, etc., they'll be back in a minute and a half, and I think that you will see 2000 reach the same sort of level of polish that our old product did.
2 questions actually. Did the moving around the dot matrix and the surface all there, the success or whatever, that influenced your thinking more? And also, Cactus Canyon, it kind of came as a surprise to me. I hadn't seen it in the show, I hadn't seen it anywhere at home. How did that fit in, since you were already working on Pinball 2000 when you started?
Well, I mean, Cactus was, you know, we had certain games in the pipeline, and we needed games to get, to the, to keep the line running. We have this, our factory is this huge animal that needs to be fed some number of games every day. And if it shuts down, we start losing money, we start bleeding. So Cactus was in the works, and basically, here's a product, you've got it all developed, you go to production, on such and such a date, you're not going to stop it, It bought us some time, and we needed as much time as we could to get that done. What was your first question?
About the display.
Oh, the display, the circus display. I think the circus display was an attempt to get you looking in the playfield and not doing this, And I would say at that particular moment in time, no, it didn't influence us. I didn't play a lot of Circus Voltaire, and it would just, I don't know, maybe subconsciously I made a connection. I don't know.
How big of a role did Brian Eddy have in development of this?
Primarily, he participated in almost every rule meeting, and Brian's role was essentially a huge contribution to rules and continuity. If you make a movie, you define the characters in the movie. No one knows those characters better than you do, and so there were things that related to the world of the Martians that were best determined by Brian, because he created that world originally. And so, my situation when we first took off on this project, it was a touchy one. Brian and I are friends, and we talked about it, and I said, listen, I'm going to put my ego aside here, because we've got to get this thing done. And we think that this is a valid theme, and we would love for you to contribute, but I'm the game designer, so I get veto power. But I'm on board, and if we can work with those rules, and he did, and we had a few arguments about, I'm trying to think, I wanted weapons, he didn't want weapons, the Martians, the definition of everything Martian, was consulted and driven by Brian.
When you look at Midway's latest game, NFL Blitz, they made a good effort to relate the home gaming systems with the arcade games, where you could actually, make your plays at home on your Nintendo 64 or something, and then bring that to the arcade, play right there. Have you ever thought about using that idea with pinball?
Yeah, by the way, that idea was a tremendous failure. It sounds cool, doesn't it? But, Lewis.
What you're seeing outside with the Pinball 2000 tournament system, with Tom and Lyman slaving away behind those laptops, it's kind of a test bed for some technology that we're working on to that degree. And like George says, if we're around, you'll see some of this stuff surface in the future. We have some great ideas for it. We just need some time to develop it. And thankfully, Expo is coming at a great time when we can actually test some of this stuff out software-wise. What you can't really see what we're working on, but some stuff is coming.
Well, you could say it was ninjas.
Well, since I can't find Rob or Mike, I'm about to do this. Thank you, George.